everyone, I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator. In this video, we are going to discuss about an important novelist and her name is Jhumpa Lahiri. So this is the picture of Jhumpa Lahiri. She is a writer now settled in America. So she is an Indian author but then traveled to and then settled in America. So hence she deals with the theme of diaspora. Diasporic studies is a very upcoming and a prominent field, and we have so many Indian authors writing about it. She is among the most famous one who writes with the theme of diaspora. So her name was Nilanjana Sudeshna, but she renamed herself to Jhumpa Lahiri. She is a Bengali woman born on 11th July 1967 and is an American author. So you can call her as an Indian American author. She is very known, very famous among all the diasporic literary writers. Jhumpa Lahiri is one of the most significant writer in the Indian diaspora at the present time, and she is expert in her writing skills. She started her career by writing a short story collection and a collection of stories, and it is called as Interpretation of Maladies, that was published in 1999. It won the 2000 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction among with her first novel, The Namesake, that was published in 2003, and it was gradually directly adopted in a popular film of the same name, and it became very famous also. So there are two things that we are discussing in this slide. First, there was this book, Interpretation of Maladies, that came out in 1999, and it received the Pulitzer Prize of Fiction in 2000. She has also written one novel. So the two novels that are very famously written by Jhumpa Lahiri are The Lowland and The Namesake, while you have one story collection that is The Interpretation of Maladies. Then let us move forward. Lahiri is a member of the President's Committee on the Art and Humanities appointed by US President Barack Obama. Her publication, The Lowland, that I told you, the second novel that she has written, was published in 2013, which is not a very, it's a contemporary novel only, was the nominee for the Man Booker Prize, and of course the National Book Award for Fiction is very famous too as well. So The Lowland was the nominee for these two also. There is another short story collection that is called as The Unaccustomed Earth, that came out in 2008, and it won the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Award, right? So she has brought laurels, and she has been expert in whatever she is writing. Whatever she has written till now, whether it is these two short stories, Unaccustomed Land or Interpretation of Maladies, or the novels that we will see, The Lowland and The Namesake, all of these four books are very, very important, and they gradually talk about the theme of alienation, the theme of being someone who is not born in that nation, but now you have to get used to this foreign feeling. They talk about migration, they talk about the feeling of diaspora, and we have discussed in the previous video what diaspora is. So diaspora has this meaning called as dispersal of seeds. Just as the seeds are dispersed and scattered, people are scattered all over the world. So we live in this diasporic world, we live in this cosmopolitan world where we can jump from one place to another, but we take something along with us. There is nostalgic feelings, as we have already discussed, and there is longing for homeland. So she will talk about the first generation migrant people and the second generation. Gradually, more focus is on the second generation people, because they become, they are ones who are truly uprooted from their homelands, but now they have to become accustomed with the new world, and also they have the baggage of the previous world because their parents are still rooted in the world they left behind. So these are the few themes that Jhumpa Lahiri gradually touches in the different novels that we'll be seeing, and The Namesake being the most famous and the most important one. So Lahiri is currently the professor of creative writing in the Princeton University, and she is really known to be very extremely good among the students also. Lahiri became the first American of the ancient descent to bag the Pulitzer Prize, that is the highest literary award of America, which regards her for her debut series, Interpretation of Maladies, and she made this record on her own, right? So this was the record that Lahiri made, and hence she is extremely famous when it comes to the writings that she has written. Now let us discuss about the Namesake. So Namesake came out in 2003, and it is a story around the protagonist called as Gogol and his mother and father, Ashima and Ashok, and all of these characters are very important. All of them are alienated, all of them are suffering at one level or another. The whole story revolves around them not living with their, not living in India, but still the parents are seeing someone who have taken the culture along with them, while Gogol, being the second generation descendant, is someone who is very much alienated from their own culture. And he is suffering because of his name. So there are a lot of things that are going on in the novel. We sometimes see that there is this identity crisis that Gogol feels because he is now torn between these two cultures, following a culture that is too much Indian in nature or American in nature. So which culture is more better? He cannot understand why his parents named him Gogol, and why are the customs so important for his parents, and why cannot he lead a proper life? So at the end, gradually he will understand the essence of his name, the story behind it, and he will understand how important it is to just be rooted where you are. Also, there is this character Ashima. Ashima is the mother of Gogol. She is very dedicated woman and loves her children, but she is still longing for her homeland. She is living in America, but she knows that her heart is still in India, and she just wants to go back. So she feels alienated, torn, and there is this all the diasporic character qualities are there in her, and she tries to be happy, but she cannot leave her past behind. Right. So Jhumpa Lahiri's first novel, The Namesake, came out in 2003, was also adopted in a popular cinematographic version, and this was given the same name, The Namesake. The Namesake is primarily a story of struggle and hardship of these Bengali parents who migrated to the United States to form their own new life and their new life ahead, beyond their knowledge. The story covers about 30 years in the life of this Ganguly family. The Kolkata-born parents immigrate as young adults to the US, where their children become adults, confronting constant pull apart and constant turns which they will face between the American culture, American life, against their parents' yearning. So their parents still want them to follow the culture that they were following, but the children cannot. So this is why they cannot find their own identity, and they find themselves clearly uprooted. They are the children who are from nowhere, right? So that is why there is a constant struggle between this American culture, American life, and the culture that is too much Bengali in itself, right? So they eat fishes, they still follow the same customs, they have same festivals, but they are not living in Bengal now. So there is a constant struggle that you will always see here. Gogol is unable to understand his father's association with his own name Gogol, and he feels very embarrassed that why he is called as Gogol and why not a normal name is given to him. So when he was born, his parents wanted their grandmother to name him because that was a custom in India that they used to follow, but the letter could not reach at the particular point of time, because in America, it was important in American culture that the baby has to be named at that point of the time only when they are in the hospital. So because of this, the naming got all wrong, and so the father named him Gogol, and he feels embarrassed with his name, and he struggles to find his own identity throughout the novel. Ashok gives him a book at the end, and it's a short story collection of Nikolai Gogol, with the hope that Gogol would understand his father's affiliation with the writer and his name. But Nikolai Gogol's story, The Overcoat, has no place in Gogol's life. And you see that The Overcoat, that is the story of Nikolai Gogol, has no role to play in the life of our character Gogol. So he is constantly in struggle and trying to find his own identity. And at the very end, where the things are at the verge of breaking, he comes to know his father's attachment and his father's feeling for the word Gogol itself, right? So this is how the story takes place. The second novel is what is the Lowland. It came out in 2013. Her second novel, The Lowland, came out in 2013, is a very complex novel about immigrant experience. Again, this novel talks about the immigrant experience and how people are unable to come to terms with this new culture. It is a novel about finding the right place, the right people, and about the sense of alienation and guilt felt by the central character. So it tells the story of these two brothers, Subhash and Udayan, and their wife Gauri. So Udayan indulges in the Naxalite movement in 1960s and Subhash escapes to US for the higher education. So before we read further, the story's title is very interesting and you will understand that the story is not opening in Calcutta, but of course, Lowland is what? It is the area between the two rivers. So sometimes it is swampy when it winters, but sometimes it is dry when in summer. So these two rivers are very much symbolic to these two brothers Subhash and Udayan, and the swampy land between is the marshy land and the marshy struggle that both these two brothers will go through, right? So Lowland, the title also says that this will be a very murky life for these two brothers who eventually come close together with some wetness in between in the winter, but during the summer they just go away. But of course, there are other lives also attached to them. Some animals would breed when there is water or there is a marshy land, while some would breed when there is summer. So there are overlapping structures, and this is a story of these two brothers and their wife Gauri. So after police encounter of Udayan, his wife Gauri is remarried to Subhash and they move to US. Gauri's journey of self-discovery is very important in this novel and it's an important theme. Her unhappy married life and the intricacies of the relationship makes this novel a very complex novel. There is always communication gap among the members of the novel because they cannot talk, they don't know themselves what are their feelings. They are always uprooted and alienated. Subhash, Gauri, Bela, daughter of Gauri and Udayan, all of them appear to be introvert in nature in the foreign land. They can never get used to that foreign land. They keep secrets and do not share their whereabouts. Their quest for living is deliberated life separates them from their own family. Doing too much efforts make them separate from their own family and also results in the creation of an identity crisis that they go through. So they are not able to understand whom they are. So with diaspora comes so many different concepts. So Homi Bhabha discussed about the concepts of mimicry. So what is mimicry? Mimicry is when one culture that is not dominant tries to mimic the other culture that is dominant. So the lesser dominant one can mimic the dominant one. But in this manner, they lose their own essence. So this is how you are not able to understand who are you. There is always the problem of identity crisis and the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of longing, the feeling of not belonging to anywhere, the feeling of uprootedness that is attached with the people who migrate. These are the few details that are always attached with the word diaspora. Then Unaccustomed Earth, that came out in 2008. The title of Jhumpa Lahiri is another collection of short story. Unaccustomed Earth 2008 express the notions of misfit, that people are misfit in a different country. There are stories from the lives of the first generation immigrants who have settled in US with the second and the third generation also. And you will see that the impact on the second and the third generation is way more than what the impact was in the first generation. Because the first generation is very clear that they love their homeland and want to go back. But the problems of alienation and loneliness are seen more in the second and the third generation migrants. The second and the third generations do not feel unaccustomed to the culture of their parents. the conflict arising due to clash between cultural identity, cultural reality, make them live in this pluralistic world with this plural cultures and multiple and plural identities. The title of the collection is taken from the passage in The Custom House, which is the preface to the Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So this is important. You should know these details because these things are asked in the exam. This is a picture. And then we have the last work that we'll be discussing, but of course it is the first work that she has written, Interpretation of Maladies, 1999. So Interpretation of Maladies is a book of collection of about 9 short stories that are written by the Indian origin writer Jhumpa Lahiri, published in 1999. It won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and the Hemingway Foundation Pen Award in the year 2000. And until now, it has sold millions of copies worldwide. So these are the few works that are written by Jhumpa Lahiri, and all of them deal with the theme of diaspora. She has written everything around this. This one word diaspora brings about the other themes also. So you should read Homi Bhabha whenever you are reading Jhumpa Lahiri, because that will give you critical perspective and a different manner of and different approach of reading this book. Also, I have seen that from your namesake, there have been passages asked, and there have been details being asked from that novel also. So I want you to read that novel. Not everything can be read, but of course few texts from which you get repeatedly questions are asked from those novels, you should read those texts, right? So Namesake is one of them, and it is very important. I have seen questions in your GATE exam also from the Namesake. So the name itself, the themes and the character's name, and the few details you should know. Also from where and why he was named as Gogol, right? So the short story Overcoat becomes important here. So you should read between the lines because that is an important novel. Also know the dates of publishing because questions are asked in that manner also. Thank you so much for just watching this video. I hope it was it was helpful and you gained some perspective out of it. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.